Hey, you're Keepin Company with Conor, and you're listening to another Townsquare Spotlight. We got a great guest for you guys today. With us, we have award-winning jazz musician, film composer, innovative educator, and Poughkeepsie native. With us today, we have Hayes Greenfield. Hayes, how are you today?
I'm very good, Conor. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
I'm really happy to have you on here, and as we were just talking about right before getting on the microphone, we were both born at Vassar Brothers Hospital here in Poughkeepsie, so that's I love having that connection there. And no, it's just so great to see the wonderful things that you're working on. And you're the founder and creator of the Creative Sound Play and author of the book Creative Sound Play for Young Learners, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But before we really dive into that educational program, I want to learn a little bit more about you. For those listening here in the Hudson Valley, could you just give like a little overview on yourself and how you got into music and your passion?
I always loved music and I always loved sound. And when I was a kid, actually Marian Anderson played at the high school.
Oh, really?
And and it was a benefit for a school, a progressive, very progressive school called the Randolph School.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Right? Because actually I had attended the Randolph School the first 4 years. And it was just amazing to listen to her. She played duo with the pianist, and it was just awesome. And I always loved sound, always loved music. And kind of like, it took a while to find my way to it. And in high school, I found my way to a saxophone. Actually, I was playing a kazoo prior to that, and that kind of inspired me to the sound of the saxophone. And I had taught myself a little bit early on about piano. What I really always loved, I went to the day school as well. And at the day school, I'll never forget this. I must have been about 10 years old, 11 years old. They had a theater troupe come. And it was an improvisational theater group. And what they did was they asked for ideas from the audience. And then this troupe would just go on and start acting, and create this scenario and improvise it. And I realized then, I was like, wow, that's what I want to do. I want to improvise. I want to be an improviser. I don't care what it is, but I want to improvise. And then later I found out that, you improvise with music and with jazz. Or any kind of music, really. It's about telling your story.
No, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Jazz is the place to do it. It's everybody thinks of improv when you think of jazz, and honestly, that's life for you at the same time, too. We're always improvising, but that's great. So you're able to start learning the saxophone. You're able to take this love of improvisation and just kind of, build a whole life and career out of it. And you've won plenty of awards with your music. You've composed for films, and also educating people on how to use sound to better their lives, whether they're musicians or not, right?
Yeah, it's a funny thing. A life as a musician, you really got to be doing a whole lot of different things sometimes to make a living,
Amen.
And so when I moved to New York, I was in Boston for a while, and then I moved to New York, and I was like 20, 21, and did a whole lot of different things to make a living until where music became the main focus. But, I drove cab, I drove limousine, cleaned houses, played on the street. I was a busker,
Oh, I feel that. I busk, I do DoorDash, and of course I'm here on the radio while I'm still trying to do my music too. So I feel you.
Of course. And then I became a teaching artist. And a teaching artist, I was doing a lot of stuff with all different aged kids, from kids who had been incarcerated at Rikers who were turning their lives around, to to pre-K kids and kids in an after-school program called The Door. And I had a program, I created a CD called Jazz-A-Ma-Tazz that turned into an assembly program and a family show that I did for kids. And I started doing that a lot. I was working for young audiences in New York, and young audiences, somebody had done a grant for special needs kids, because special needs kids really don't get access to assembly programs. The special needs schools are the last ones to get it. And somebody noticed that and really decided that was wrong. And they got a whole bunch of funding to do special needs. So for like about 2 years, I did a ton of special needs schools. And it was great. And it was kind of the entree. I did a workshop with some high functioning special needs high school students at a District 75 school in Queens. And it really kind of was the beginning of realizing how sound, pitch, volume, and duration, and whether it's high or low, and we're in between. It's not melody. We're not dealing with that. We're just dealing with pitch, like a bird, chip, 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 or a lion. How loud or how soft, and how long or how short. And when you start focusing like that, all of a sudden, you start to get involved with making deliberate and intentional type sounds in specific ways. And children, it doesn't matter who they are, how old they are, it doesn't matter. It's like every child, every person loves to make sound. It's part of our DNA. It's like communication skills. And what's wonderful, and what kind of like started and started there, was to really realize that when you start to make a deliberate and intentional type of sound, it doesn't matter if you actually make that sound, but as long as you're focusing and engaged with trying to make that sound, you're developing your executive function skills, yes, which is inhibitory control, working memory, and cognitive flexibility. And one of the people that I've worked with, Adele Diamond, her work over the last 35 years has really been about establishing the fact that executive function skills is a much better determinant than IQ, because IQ is what we're given, we're born with it, and it's what it is. We can't affect it. But when you enhance and develop executive function skills, inhibitory control, which is waiting before speaking, it's not going on automatic pilot, it's being very much in the moment. Working memory, which is keeping all of the possibilities in mind at the same time. It's also about being able to follow direction. And cognitive flexibility, being able to do different things at different times, take advantage of serendipity, creativity. When you enhance those skills, you're more likely to do better in school and go on. Her data of 35 years, and those kids go on to do better in school and finish college. So sound just turns into this tremendous educational learning tool.
Absolutely. I never worked as an educator, but I did work at a summer camp for about like 10 years. And I was doing a bunch of I did music camps, I did science camps, I did the gambit of different things, a lot of specialty stuff. And you're right. A lot of the things that we would do, I would incorporate loud noises, soft noises. We would do some clapping things to try to get them engaged before we got into the activity, just to get it all together. Sure. So hearing about this sounds really incredible. And honestly, I agree with you. The executive function skills that you're able to grow really is so important to being a functional person and to be able to really expand upon all the strengths that one already has. So that's how you got to creative sound play. And I really want to talk about a lot of the things that you wrote in the book and that you have through the program. What are some of these skills that you're trying to teach these teachers, these leaders, these parents, and how exactly does it look and sound like when they're applying these things?
Conor, great question. Really great. So the first thing is, when since you're a musician too, one of the things that's so incredible about teachers, pre-K teachers, that I've found is that, and they're my heroes, is that they do it for the passion, not the money. And what they really want to do is make a difference in a child's life. And my biggest obstacle, the reason why I bring this up is because my biggest obstacle is getting teachers and parents and anybody who's non-musician to not think, this is the hard one. From my experience, 99% of the people, when I tell them what I do, I work with sound, they immediately focus and say, "You mean music?" And I say, "No, sound." And when I went in the very beginning, I said pitch, high like a bird, low like a lion's roar, volume loud or quiet, duration long or short. It's the only thing we're focusing on. It has nothing to do with music. And it's very important that everybody realize that sound comes before anything we could ever call music. Sound is ubiquitous. Sound is everywhere. And as well, because sound is ubiquitous, we turn it off. We tune it out. Yes. And we've become sound asleep. We're all sleeping with sound. We're sound asleep. And yet it's this incredible, robust educational tool that anybody listening to this podcast right now, radio, whatever this is,
All the above.
all of the above, anybody can have access to working with sound. And it plugs into the one thing that every child loves to do, and they love to be challenged. So, and there's no wrong way to do it. So when I was saying earlier, if you're being deliberate and intentional about the type of sound you're making, and you don't make the sound, not coming out what you think, it's okay. You're engaged, and eventually it will come out, because as you do it more, and the more you get involved with it, the more you practice, of course, the more you're able to master it. And then the more you're able to master it, the more you're able to add a little bit of complexity. And for all of those adults out there, so one of the things you have to realize is that your children, as soon as you plug into making sound, they're going to want to go for it with you right away. And it doesn't matter how silly you feel you look. It's great to be silly. It's great to make a fool of yourself. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, do that again, Conor. Any sound is cool. And if you take it, it's like, if you make a sound, you have the kids making a sound, and then you say, can you make that same sound really quiet? And then make it really loud, and then make it medium. What you're doing is providing opportunity for that child to make a different sound in different ways. And then if you're outside listening, or you're spending time with your kids, and you go, let's just listen to the sounds. Let's actively just listen. And you start to listen to the sounds, and you say, well, what are those sounds? It's opportunity for discussion, opportunity to say, wow. And then if a loud sound comes along and all of a sudden obliterates all the quieter sounds, and then it leaves, and then all of a sudden you can hear it back again. What is that? What was happening there? And if we plug into sound and tune into sound, and we all become sensitive to sound, what we can do is it can change our whole awareness. If a kid comes in running, and sometimes they can be really loud and it's jarring, and you go, stop, you're too loud. But if you become aware of sound, instead of being punitive, you might say, wow, really loud sound. I bet you can't make that quiet. And then all of a sudden, the kids do, and then they make it louder and quieter. And all of a sudden, what you're doing, you're providing opportunity for these children, for anybody, to understand and to internalize what they do matters. And when teachers do that, I have teachers who come to me who say they've spent time doing that stuff with the kids, and all of a sudden these 3-year-olds come into class and say, it's too loud in here, can we quiet down? And if you think for a second, the mindfulness of what that means, that a 3-year-old comes into a room, reflects, listens to what's going on, is mindful enough and can be reflective enough to hear what's going on, and then can say, if we just quiet down a little bit. And that's what I'm doing. That's what creative sound play is all about. It's providing children, anybody, with the opportunity just to step back, listen, think for a moment, and go, well, wait a second. It's loud. I can't focus. I'm having trouble learning. Why is that? It's so loud in here.
Wow. That's amazing. So much intentional use of sound throughout this. And the cognitive skills, the mindful skills, the executive function skills. That's so amazing. It was funny as you're talking. It just kind of reminds me of some things, that I was doing when I was working with kids at the camp. It sounds like I was kind of imploring some of these skills without even realizing it. I would do like clap once if you hear me, clap twice, or I would do like the shaving a buzz cut with the kids, and they would repeat that. Sometimes I would go, if you can hear me, go wahoo. If you can hear me, say heck yeah. And then I also like doing the song Shout, a little bit louder now, shout a little bit louder now, or a little bit softer now, a little bit.
Right,
and
of course.
That's what I would do to get the kids' attention, and
absolutely. And you got there, and they were attentive right away.
Oh yeah, and they would have so much fun with it. They're laughing, they're giggling, they're into it. And once I could tell, they were in it with me, it was like, okay, here's the activity, and we get into it. But it was just like such a great 10 to 15 second icebreaker to get us all in the right mindset of whatever it is we were about to do.
Well, that's what you're talking about, a transition. And that's exactly how you should use it, is for transition times.
Tell me about transitions, yes.
So transition times are the times of the day that happen every 45 minutes. As soon as you need to transition your kids from one subject matter to another, from one activity to another. And it happens throughout the day. And it is the most challenging time for teachers. And I've done conferences and I have 300 teachers out in front of me, and I talk to them and I say, transitions are actually incredible jewels. They're gems. And they look at me like I have got two heads. I'm totally crazy. And then you start to do what you were doing, right? If you're saying, get a little softer, well, what's that? That's executive function skills. It's inhibitory control. That's paying attention. That's cognitive flexibility. And when you start to use sound in this way, and it could be with anything, it doesn't have to be with song. It could be with saying the alphabet. It could be with saying the letters of, phonemic awareness, which ends up becoming Monday, Tuesday. That's pre-reading literacy. Or it can be a million things. You can get into teaching your curriculum, all of your subject matter that you want to do. And it helps teachers because your kids get immediately focused. And then what happens is the teacher then can transition into being a facilitator as opposed to always the leader, and have your students lead it. And then all of a sudden the kids start taking independence and agency, and they become much more empathetic toward each other because sound is collaborative in nature. Wow. So it's all of these aspects. It's an interconnected learning ecosystem that when you start to get into sound and you hear about it, and then, and through the book. So I just want to say, anybody if they're interested, the book's coming out, and through the book, it's got a quick start guide, which really plugs into 4 basic different kinds of transition times, because one transition doesn't necessarily fit all transitions. And then it's because like you use different sound activities. You were using different sound things to get the clapping, which is about hand-eye coordination, and it depends on how you would want to use that. You can have levels of complexity with stomping and clapping and barking all at the same time. 1, 2, woof. 1, 2, woof. However you want to do it. So all of a sudden, you can tell stories with sound, right? Sound is so deep, and you can create pictures. So I have this creative sound plays about how you get into it, how you get to actively work with it. And with transition times is where I focus in the beginning, because every teacher struggles with transition times.
Big time.
And it's a waste of time. It's transitions. The amount of time that's wasted in transitions is tremendous. So all of a sudden now with sound, you start to plug into it and fight, like you do in 10 seconds. You got the kids ready to rock and roll. You just had your transition. You're moving, but it's also these incredibly play-based short learning bursts that happen. So it's an incredible learning ecosystem. It's all connected. And transitions are the way in.
You're right. No, it is all connected. And honestly, I got goosebumps, the stuff that you're saying. Like I know that we can't see each other right now, but like I'm beaming right now. This is awesome. And
beautiful, Conor.
It really is beautiful. And another thing that I wanted to bring up, and this is something that was based on my education, and I wanted to bring this up to you, and I wanted to see what you thought about it. One of the things that my music teachers, in music school would tell me, there's power in what you don't play. And how going into that whole less is more thing. So I'm just curious how we're talking about sounds, we're talking about mindfulness. How does silence play into creative sound play?
You're amazing, Conor. I'm very impressed.
I appreciate it.
You're a young dude, man. I called you a kid, but you're very astute.
They say I'm a 52-year-old in a 26-year-old body. That's what my friends say.
You're an old soul, man.
Absolutely.
You got some stuff happening. It's beautiful. So
thank you.
Silence is profound. Like sometimes the most important notes are the notes you don't play. Yeah. And I think that might have been what your teachers were saying. And silence provides pause. It provides a time for breath. It also creates tension.
Very good.
Right? And so it has all of these moments to it. And children love to play silence. They love to play it. I'll tell you a quick story. I don't know how much time we have left.
Go for it. We got enough time. Just go for it.
Okay. So there's a poet, a beat poet named Hetty Jones. And I used to do my Jazz-A-Ma-Tazz, I did this live interactive children's show called Jazz-A-Ma-Tazz, and I did it, and I was doing it at the Bowery Poetry Club once a month, and she came with her grandchild. And I'd go to the store and I get party noisemakers, for parties, all different kinds, little squeezy things that they make a sound, and the things you hit, it's a hammer, and, the wang and the cranks and all that stuff. And, and I would hand them to the kids, and we were doing a performance, and she got up to do a poem with the kids, and the kids wouldn't stop playing, and she stopped, and she was getting frustrated. She said, "Listen, there's no room for me, right? There's no silence. There's no room for me to do my thing." So I said, "Okay, hold on a second." I said to all the kids, and they're like 3, 4, 5, and 6 years old, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe 7, but that's, in New York City, when you're doing kids shows, yeah. Really, that's about the age. I said, "Listen, if you play a sound, then you have to play a silence. And if you play a sound, play a silence. And you have to wait a little bit. So we practice it for a second. I said, now play silence." I mean, everybody played silence like they're actively playing. And then I said, now play sound. They played their sound. So I said, okay, now that's what it is. If we're going to do this thing, and Hetty's going to read her poem. Man, it was like all of a sudden it was magic, because these kids would play a sound and wait. So you'd hear, "Bop, whoop, dee," and then Hetty would talk. Wow. And then you'd hear, and Hetty would do a poem. She would read a line, and it made it possible. So it was like, all of a sudden, it's kind of like, it's silence is so valuable, and children love to play silence. So it was like, so I said to everybody there, I said, so there you go, parents. Next time your kids are too loud, just say, play silence.
Wow.
It's about play. It's like, you're a musician. I'm a musician. One of the things that we do that is the most remarkable thing, and it's always blows my mind, is that when I have a gig, I go to play, And what is play? Play is about listening. It's about interacting. It's about being in the moment. Absolutely. And I'm not talking music, it's having a conversation like we're having now. I'm kind of dominating it because you're interviewing me, but
I'm loving it though.
But that's this style of conversation. We could go out and have a beer and have a completely different conversation.
But there is something magical about it, and there's really something else. One of the greatest things as a musician, I also do theater as well. The stillness, the silence that you get when you have a crowd and everybody is so in tune with what's going on in those moments. It's absolutely. Like it's awesome to get like the cheers and to get people singing along or people really like up and going. That's amazing. It's always so much fun. It's always so energetic. But those moments of stillness, as you're saying with the silence, just, oh my God, some of the best, most chilling, most impactful moments when I have in my career. I think I remember some of those more than I remember the uproars than anything else. Honestly, is so impactful. I believe that music in whatever form, when sound, the music of just day-to-day life, going outside, whatever, I think music expresses emotions better than anything, any other form of communication I'm aware of, because it just gets down to the root and the heart of each individual and as the community. It's so impressive. Yes. And the way that you're doing it is blowing my mind right now. I'm loving these stories, and I'm loving everything when it comes to creative sound play. So, of course, you said with the book, Creative Sound Play for Young Learners, where will people be able to get this book?
People can get this book through any. It's on Routledge Taylor Francis as part of it's a major educational publisher. It's on their Ion Education series, and any book, Amazon, any bookseller is going to do it. But if you also want to, if you go to my website, creativesoundplay.com, I also have a video curriculum that starts with the Quick Start Guide, and I have it with a learning management system, an LMS system, so that it's 4 modules, and you can take it, and then at the end of it, if you finish it and you take the quiz, which is very simple, it's really pretty basic, you get a certificate.
Mm.
So that's available. I also do coaching sessions. I do a lot of live coaching sessions. I do some stuff with the National Head Start Association where I teach. They have a couple. I have a course on their website where we do twice a year. I do a month of coaching sessions, and I teach at pre-Ks. I teach. I'm not. I'm more interested at this point in my life. It's better for me to teach teachers, teacher coaches, and parents and
Yeah.
caregivers than kids because there's not the energy level and everything else. So I'm available to do all that stuff through the website.
That's so powerful, and that's so great because that's a trickle-down effect. You're able to affect so many people that way, and you're able to show off this education and move it and expand it and grow it. No, that's terrific.
Well, it's amazing. Like, Adele, last year she was sending something on my behalf to somebody. And she just said, it's amazing that it's taken so long for somebody to codify this method because it's entirely play-based.
Yeah.
And it makes, it helps teachers teach. It helps them reinvigorate teachers, because it takes this, it's the idea. One of the things that I tell teachers is imagine, and what's amazing is to watch the lights go on in their minds, in their heads. When I say to them, imagine that when you're not leaving school or on your way to school, you might actually be thinking, what kind of transition do I want to do today? How do I want to, what transition, how do I want to work with the transitions? And they look at me like I am nuts.
But it makes sense.
Then halfway through they get it and they start going, and then they come up to me at the end and they're like, wow, I can't wait to get into class tomorrow. Or this and that, I'm going to try this. And it's just to just go for it.
Mm.
It's okay to be silly. It's okay not to do it well. The kids aren't going to know. Turn off the judgments. Turn off all that stuff in your head. We all have it. I'm sure you get insecure when you
Absolutely.
before you perform, and it takes a long time to be able to learn how to do it. So nobody's expecting anybody to teach music. It's just about sound. It's about having just good old fun, joy.
So good. I'm filled with joy having this conversation with you. Hayes, thank you so much for being here on Townsquare Spotlight. We'll have all the links and information into the description of this interview for all of you guys to be able to check out. You can learn more about the program. You can check more out on Creative Soundplay, more about Hayes himself. We'll have that all in the description. Hayes, before we go, any last little nugget? You've had so many great nuggets throughout this episode, but do you have any last little nugget for our listening audience right now?
Well, I'd like to thank you for this wonderful opportunity.
Oh, no
and I'd like to end with what I heard Adele Diamond say. And it's this. And you fall in line with this because you're doing a lot of this stuff just on your own intuitively. Adele was asked at the end of which is how I met her, because I called her up after I heard this. And I have to just say, I'm dyslexic. I didn't go to college. And I knew that coming out of high school, that kind of environment, you got to understand, I came up in the 60s and 70s, and dyslexia at that time wasn't really known about what to do with kids like that. And she said something that really opened my head, which was really beautiful. She was asked exactly that last question, and she said, without skipping a beat, she said, there are a lot of people out there who don't have any fancy degrees or job titles doing really important work, and we need to be listening to them. And I just want to say that as someone who didn't have any fancy degrees or job titles or anything else like that, she opened up, and along with Clancy Blair and Sibel Raver, and Ellen Galinsky, three other amazing developmental neuroscientists, the opportunity to really examine what I'm doing. And I would just say, if you're out there and you have the inspiration to try to think about working with sound, and just dive in, start doing it, think about it. Think about pitch, volume, and duration. Just stop and just take a moment and take very important, mindful moments to just listen around you to the things and think about them. Just listen to them and think about how they interact with each other.
Wow. If anything else, I'm glad that we had this interview. Oh my God.
Conor, you're beautiful. You're really beautiful. Thank you so much. I so appreciate the opportunity to share what I do with your listeners.
I greatly appreciate it. Thanks so much, Hayes.